Made in India is a known phrase now. It is a known policy action now, which is followed by the country, by many of the companies. But it was a way of life for someone who led the company like that. I am talking about Mr. Desh Bandhu Gupta, who not only nurtured company with that ethos, with that thought, but also built an empire. And to discuss about the book and the company, I have the next generation, Mr. Nilesh Gupta as well as Vinita Gupta. Welcome. First of all, I want to ask you, Vinita, it is mentioned in the book, the thoughts not only come, applied in boardroom, it comes from home values as well. What was your first memory? Was something, a company which is not just a family business, but it is much more than that for DBG?
It was very early in the evolution of Lupin. DBG would take us to the annual get-together around Diwali. Used to be our fiscal start, So he would always do a town hall in Kalina, where the company started, and have everybody that all the employees they used to fit on a floor, in the terrace. And he would talk about his passion, his vision for the company. And the earliest I remember was that of tuberculosis, how passionate he was that he found a cause that has unmet need. He would talk about the fact that multinationals are not serving it effectively. And the largest, population of TB patients is in India, and a real need to really serve that cause with reliable supply of drugs. And that's what started the vision of building, the capabilities to manufacture tuberculosis drugs, whether it's the API as well as dosage form, got Lupin into fermentation, into synthetic chemistry, and create a major presence to serve the need.
Definitely. Nilesh, I want to ask you, I have read before that you were always sure that you want to come here or somebody dragged you.
I think it was preordained. I was born in the company. The company was already existent at that point of time. I was a kid. I didn't know better in any case. India was majorly into chemicals and chemistry and APIs at that point of time, and chemical engineering was the order of the day. I think places like UDCT were something where we hired very often from. So I think very early on it was, yes, you'll do engineering. I think we always focused on the sciences. So I think commerce and stuff like that was frowned upon.
It was something which came from DBG, or you had that, whether or not he says that I'm going to do this?
I wanted to work at Lupin, but I think the direction came from DBG. Both, yes, you should do a science degree. Engineering was something which he talked about, and it appealed to me very easily. And I always wanted to work in Lupin, go do an MBA, and come back to Lupin at some point of time. So almost preset in that, very very boring in that, and I think there were no great stories around that. But yeah, I was very happy to do it, and I'm glad that I did.
And how much of the role Vinita played in that?
Vinita played a role in getting me back to Lupin after business school. I think that was the big role that Vinita played. I think it was Dad mostly who drove the education decisions, not just for me, but for most of our family.
Right. Coming to the title of the book, Made in India. If I remember correctly, even the song Made in India came in 1995, much later than the ad of the IPO, which was there for the company. How much of that ethos you saw while growing up in DBG, and which actually was followed and later flourished?
It was really part and parcel of him. His name says it, Desh Bandhu Gupta. He was very proud to be Indian. And he tried, I think the book talks about the fact that he tried to get into Air Force.
Yes.
And wanted to really serve the country.
To Air Force, which he, could not clear.
Yeah. Yes, and then a professor, and then worked in the industry. So India was in his blood.
Right.
And he really wanted to make a difference to India. So it was right from the start. It was in the ethos.
If I can add, I think while Dad was very much about India and this, I don't think he shied away from a worldview. and the like. And I think so. Made in India. It was always made in India, not just for India. It was always for the world. So I think that's really the context that really appeals to us as well.
And definitely, and now you catering to the world while making in India, and that is what even the government is doing that. And I was talking about that song as well. You can claim royalty somewhere. But coming back to your childhood, Vinita, I mean, how was the atmosphere at home? Was he someone who will tell you the way you should lead life, the way you should do things? Because what I have read in the book, even with your mother, he was taking advices. In fact, the first VC funding came from your mother.
That's right. He would very, fondly called her the astute venture capitalist that invested in, in him and Lupin. No, it was a very, very inclusive environment at home, where he would have everyone around the table and he would share his dreams, he would share his vision and get opinions around the table. But in terms of shaping the future, he would very much look at what we want to do. I mean, he certainly, the values came from him, and he used to love demonstrating. He was big in not just talking about doing something, but demonstrating and leading, showing how it is done. So he had a very disciplined lifestyle in terms of waking up at early in the morning, doing all his yoga, his exercise.
And he was very punctual about it.
Very punctual. Every minute was planned. And he would, very disciplined about his breakfast, reading all the newspapers, getting fully up to date with what is going on in the industry, and then starting the work. And then at the end of the day, again, he would be was very active, but full of energy. So the day started with energy and ended with energy. He'd go to the beach, take one of the leaders or one of us along with him to walk on the beach and still talk about the business. What are we going to do next? How do we make Lupin a success? And it was that passion that really drove us to really get interested in the business, because I was an artist as a kid.
Architect.
Yes, and I used to paint. And he asked, when it came time to decide what I wanted to study, he said, do you want to go into architecture? Do you want to,
That option was given.
Totally, the option was given. And I said, no, I really want to add value to what you have built. And my dream was always to take Lupin global, take Lupin into, his dream was to see Lupin in the US. And I wanted to play a role in that dream. So it was very early that I got hooked to the business.
Definitely, and transforming a company, MD Pharma to Lupin, I mean, making that to take over. Many would not know how that happened, but this book definitely talks about it. Which are those crises which the way it was handled? First, I remember the law when came in around 1970, patent law, which he is talking, and he is saying, the writer is saying that it is more of being lucky at the same time the company was getting built. I want to understand from your experience as well, how has been handling crisis? Because before even you joined, he had seen at least 2 to 3 major points where company could have been either ways. So how have you applied those learnings during your tenure?
I joined Lupin at a low, right? I joined in '96, and that was a very tough time in the company, right? We call that the missed decade, right? Because if you think about where Lupin was in 1990 and where it reached in 2000, we didn't really have any meaningful growth that happened in that time. And if you flash a few years back, Lupin was the same size as Ranbaxy, and Ranbaxy was the big story in the 90s,
right,
on where it went with globalization, scale, API, US, all of that. We missed out on that time because of our business model being outdated, and a bunch of reasons. So when I joined Lupin, that was actually a very tough time to join in. I was a spectator to that, and then I was a kid out of college, so I was a spectator to see it at that point of time. People like Vinita and Kavita actually stood shoulder to shoulder with Dad to eventually come around that crisis and the like. But I think that formed part of our DNA. You don't take things for granted. Things are not always going to be positive. and there is a way out. It may be tough, but there is a way out as well. I think in many ways, Dad's life was about overcoming hurdles. What was in the 90s was existential, and I'm sure a few times before that would have been also like, is this company going to make it or is not going to make it? So, in a flash forward to COVID and post-COVID, I think Lupin hit a low at that point of time as well. And, I think between Vinita and me, and, we didn't have Dad with us at that point of time, but he had his learnings. And for us, it was very clearly about, we've seen this movie before, and we know we have to make tough choices, and we know there are some decisions that potentially could have been taken before, but we'll take them now. So we bit the pain, we came out of it, as you've seen. I think if you look at it from 2020, where in 2021, I think we hit a low. And I think from that perspective, getting back to where we were and beyond, I think we've been able to do that, refreshing the business model, refreshing the learning, the leadership team. There's all these changes that you make. So I think it comes to us. We would never take a business model for granted. We would never take a success for granted. We would always look to what more we can do.
And plus, throughout the life history, what I have read, he would call out a problem, and then go on to resolve it rather than, brushing it off or not saying, not admitting that it is a problem.
No, he would tackle it head on.
Yeah, he was not hesitant to take tough calls at all.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Vinita, the same question I'll ask to you. He mentioned a time period where Lupin was in crisis, and it has been in phases since beginning. What is your topmost learning with your father, which you are applying still?
So it's interesting because I actually joined right at the time of the IPO.
Right.
And the crisis started right after that. So I lived through it. And it was a wonderful learning experience. One, to see how, the debt that we put onto the company after the IPO started choking the business. And that led, to the downward spiral, to still continuing to focus on the key technology areas. At that time, the company was focused on the cephalosporins for the Indian market, but long-term for the global market. And so we worked on the balance sheet restructuring. I had the opportunity of working with him and the team on trying to come up with a solution. We tried to do a private equity deal to restructure our debt for many, many years. But our balance sheet was really challenging in the early days, and we could not get it done until 2003. And when we did it, the value inflection did happen. But the important learning for me was, one, take on a challenge, tackle it head on. Like you said, don't brush it under the carpet. You have to really look at a problem as a problem and start thinking about solutions. That was number one. Number two was a longer term vision. It was not about the next quarter or the next 3 quarters or the next year. It was, what is our purpose? That purpose was always very, very sacrosanct for us. And that purpose is the long-term driver that really helps you navigate through a challenging phase. And we use it even now. When we went through this period during COVID, yes, it was a down, but we had our vision very clear. We are taking our company from generics to complex generics to specialty to innovation, and we're going to navigate that value inflection. And we will have to do things to correct our current reality. So we made some tough decisions in terms of closing down the women's health business in the US, divesting our Japanese business, things that were essential to be able to set ourselves for success going forward.
Talking particularly about Lupin, now we are in a fast-changing world, especially with Mr. Trump getting very active recently, and now at least even India has announced a trade deal with United States. Which are the changes and benefit you see with all these development? And of course, when you talk about future of Indian pharma, how can you leave Lupin behind?
Sure. Maybe I'll start, but I think this is something that Vinita should add to as well. I think the book very clearly captures how policy decisions can actually lead to an industry being created and a company being created as well, right? I mean, if you take the Patent Act, if you take Hatch-Waxman, these two pieces created eventually the generic industry, plus India's role into the generic industry, and therefore the role that Lupin built, the position that Lupin built to be the third largest generic company in the US by prescriptions. So I think policy is extremely important and the like, but there's long-term ramification of this. You're talking about 30 years, right? Even in today's world, you can flash that down to 20 years. You can bring it down to 10 years. It's not 2 years, right? So I think it does work in that. I think the future of Indian pharma is extremely bright. It's not the old playbook, right? And I think the playbook has always changed. I think generics did not exist before '84 and the like. That's when the opportunity came up. I think, thankfully, we have this muscle memory around generics. We know generics like the back of our hand. Therefore, the evolution from generics to complex generics has not been a 20-year story. It's been a 5 or 10-year story in that. And the next big piece is innovation. I think it's something that we've been chasing for the last 5 years. I think it's now time to take some bold bets and get deeper into innovation.
Right. Particularly about US, I'll come to you, Vinita. The question I was putting, with now India securing a deal with United States, particularly from your point of view, how do you see that it is a kind of relief which has been done? Or when even Nilesh was mentioning, you're not looking at 2 year, 3 year down the line, but policy changes are something which should be long term. But in a world like this, where the announcements are like, we know 1 month something is happening, second month something is happening, how do you adjust to these challenges and how do you prepare yourself?
Yeah, so it impacts the sentiment. It doesn't impact the long term, but the thing is, in our industry, the efforts of what we make today show only like few years from now. It's not, 1 month, next month, right? And certainly with all of the back and forth that has happened on the trade deal between the US and India, which started on a very, very good note early last year and then went declined, it's great to see us in a place where there's a balance and there's a good starting place with the current trade deal. There's also been a constant exemption for pharma. So while the overall market sentiment got dampened because of the relationship between the countries, but pharma has been tackled separately because it's a very essential industry. And the Indian pharma industry is very essential for the US pharma, the patients and the whole healthcare system. I mean, the Indian companies supply 50% of the prescriptions that are dispensed in the US. If you look at the pipelines of the Indian companies now versus global companies, the highest percentage of products filed to on the generic front is Indian companies. So we are a very important part of the US healthcare system, which has been acknowledged. Has it been fully acknowledged? I think there is still a lot of education that we have to do as an industry, but the industry is done. I mean, all of the generic drug companies and the Indian Pharma Alliance companies have played a very active role in emphasizing the importance of generics in the overall healthcare system and the role that India plays in it. And it is, if you look at the next few years now, I mean, our industry has evolved from simple generics to complex generics. Now we see opportunity on the biosimilars front starting to evolve. After that, it's going to be peptides. After that, it's going to be oligonucleotides. After that, it's going to be ADCs. So there's a tremendous opportunity to build on that start of affordable medicines itself, to start with, And then there is a separate opportunity on the innovation front, which, all of us, majority of us, top pharma companies aspire to have both a presence on the generic side of the business with affordable medicines, but also innovative medicines that can meet unmet need for patients. I'm confident that India will develop that muscle of building innovation, as well as partnering with innovative companies to find faster avenues to get needed drugs to market.
And US remains a key market for you.
It does. I mean, it is, even today, it's the largest market in the world. And when you look at all of the challenges that Big Pharma has had with the MFN, and you look at what they have chosen to do, all of them chose to invest in the US. They are now launching products outside of the US at the same price as the US, because the US is still one of the largest markets and still is the market that pays for the investment in innovation. So, it's a very important market for the pharmaceutical industry.
But the innovation story will be a global story, and it'll be an India story as well, right?
I think we cannot leave AI behind.
we cannot leave AI behind, but it will be an India story as well. I think we had this panel, as you know, and there was a very good discussion on innovation and whether innovation that is coming from India will be accepted in India. And I think the world has changed. And I think there's an opportunity now to innovate for India, be first to market with products in India as well. And I think that will be a wonderful goal to chase. I think companies like Lupin are fortunate to have the US and India almost at equal size, right? I mean, US is ahead. 2 years ago, India was ahead. 2 years later, who knows which one will be ahead. But both of these will be big, important markets. And I think it's important to cater to both these markets as they change.
Right. Last few questions before we wrap. Taking forward DBG's legacy, 5 years or 10 years from now, let's take a longer vision. Which will be levers of growth? One, innovation you already talked about.
That very likely will be the biggest lever. And that was DBG's dream as well. DBG started the new chemical entity research in the company 20 years ago. More than 20 years ago. And at that time, his vision was Lupin has to bring its own molecules to market. And that gave us the opportunity of coming up with first-in-class, best-in-class potential molecules and licensing to Big Pharma. So, really building out that innovative pipeline, both for India as well as the globe, in particular the US, is going to be an important part of that vision as we look at the next 10 years. But likewise, building on the affordable medicines platform, global generics, and taking it from where it is right now into biosimilars and the other modalities is an equally important part of our mission. And then building on our India legacy with the presence that we have, the brand equity that we have with the physicians community across multiple therapy areas, building on that through, again, affordable medicines, but also innovative medicines. More and more, we hope that in the next 10 years, our business evolves into a good, substantial percentage of innovation-driven business across the globe.
But we are looking at innovation in the broadest sense of the word. I think, our leadership team just last week spent 2 days on what does innovation mean to us and where all do we embed innovation. You talked about AI. I mean, that's a very important part, and that's a very important tool to be used as well. Innovation for brands and the like, DBG used to say a company is known by its brand. So that is cardinal. I think that has to happen. But innovation in manufacturing, you can't keep manufacturing the same way that you did 20, 30 years ago, right? And continuous manufacturing, all those things. I think there's a lot to be done. So I think this is a very exciting time for the industry. Backed by AI, I think it opens up so much more avenues for innovation, and it's going to be a fun time.